The great hall of the Valorian palace was filled with thousands of beings from across the galaxy. Golden light fell from crystal chandeliers that floated in the air without any chains or ropes. The walls were made of white stone that glowed softly, and the floor was polished so perfectly that it looked like a mirror. Queen Kira stood at the center of the hall. She was tall and beautiful, with silver hair that fell past her shoulders and eyes that changed color like the surface of an ocean. Her skin was pale blue, and when she moved like water flowing through a river. She wore a dress made of starlight, or at least that was what the humans called it. To her people, the Valorians, it was simply fabric woven from the energy of dying stars. Today was her wedding day, and she had never felt so empty. The treaty between Earth and the Valorian Empire had been signed 3 months ago. It was a simple agreement. Earth would provide resources and soldiers. The Valorians would provide technology and protection. But the politicians on both sides wanted something more. They wanted a symbol. They wanted a marriage. Kira had agreed because she was a queen, and queens did not have the luxury of choosing their own hearts. She would marry a human. She would smile. She would play her part, but she had expected someone impressive. She had expected a warrior with fire in his eyes, or a king with power in his voice. Instead, they sent her Daniel Park. He stood at the other end of the hall waiting for her. He was not tall. He was not short. He was simply average. His hair was black and neatly combed. His face was calm and pleasant. He wore a simple black suit that looked almost boring compared to the bright colors of the Valorian nobles around him. When Kira first met him 2 weeks ago, she had asked him what his qualifications were. He had smiled and said he was a diplomat. She had asked him if he had ever been in a war. He had paused for a moment, then said he preferred peace. The nobles of her court had laughed at him behind his back. They called him the pet and the earth toy. One of them had said that marrying a human was like marrying a child. Humans live such short lives. They were so fragile, so weak. Daniel had heard all of it. He always seemed to be nearby when people spoke about him, but he never got angry. He never raised his voice. He simply smiled and nodded and continued asking questions about Valorian poetry and music and food. It was infuriating. Kira walked down the long aisle toward him. The guests bowed as she passed. She could feel their eyes on her, judging her, pitying her. The great Queen Kira married to a human. What a waste. When she reached Daniel, he bowed deeply. His movements were respectful and precise. When he stood up, he met her eyes and smiled. It was a gentle smile, without any arrogance or fear. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. "Thank you for doing this." She did not know how to respond to that. No one had ever thanked her for a political marriage before. She simply nodded and turned to face the priest. The ceremony was long and filled with ancient words. Kira spoke her vows without feeling them. Daniel spoke his vows slowly and carefully, like he meant every word. When the priest declared them married, the crowd cheered, but Kira felt nothing. The celebration lasted for hours. There was food and music and dancing. Daniel stood beside her, shaking hands with nobles and ambassadors. He was polite to everyone, even the ones who insulted him with fake smiles. Kira watched him carefully. There was something strange about him. He never seemed surprised by anything. When a noble made a cruel joke about humans, Daniel laughed along with them. When a general tested him by asking about military tactics, Daniel gave a simple answer that seemed foolish at first. But later, Kira thought about his answer and realized it was actually quite clever. She also noticed that he watched everything. His eyes moved constantly, looking at the guards, the doors, the windows. He memorized the faces of everyone he met. He asked innocent questions that somehow revealed important information. Who was this man? The celebration ended late at night. The guests left, and the servants cleaned the hall. Kira and Daniel were taken to their private chambers. The room was enormous, with a bed the size of a small ship and windows that looked out at the stars. They stood in silence for a long moment. Kira did not know what to say. She had married this man, but she did not know him at all. "I want you to know something," Daniel said finally. His voice was soft. "I know this marriage is not what you wanted. I know you had no choice. I want you to know that I will never make you uncomfortable. I will never ask for anything you do not wish to give." Kira looked at him. His face was honest and open. There was no hunger in his eyes, no hidden agenda that she could see. "Why did you agree to this?" she asked. "You could have said no. Earth would have found someone else." Daniel walked to the window and looked out at the stars. "Because I believe this alliance is important," he said. "Earth is young. We have only been in space for 200 years. Your people have been among the stars for 10,000 years. We have so much to learn from each other. And you were willing to sacrifice your life for that?" He turned back to her and smiled. "My life is not a sacrifice. It is a gift. I get to live in a palace made of starlight. I get to learn about a civilization older than human history. I get to know you." Kira felt something shift inside her chest. It was small and confusing, and she pushed it away immediately. "You are a strange man, Daniel Park," she said. "So I have been told." They talked for another hour. Daniel asked her about her childhood, her duties, her burdens. He listened without interrupting. When she spoke about the pressure of being queen, he nodded like he understood. For the first time, Kira felt like someone was actually listening to her. Not to the queen, to her. When they finally went to sleep, Daniel took a blanket and lay on a couch near the window. He did not try to share her bed. He simply wished her good night and closed his eyes. Kira lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling. She had expected to feel trapped by this marriage. Instead, she felt something else. Something she could not name. The next morning, a servant burst into their room with panic on his face. He fell to his knees before Kira and delivered the message that would change everything. Ascend. The Valorian scout ship had sent an emergency signal. The Keth Dominion, the most brutal empire in the galaxy, had crossed into Valorian space. Their warships numbered in the thousands. Their message was simple. Surrender or die. War was coming. And Kira had no idea that the quiet man sleeping on her couch was the only one who could save them all. The War Council met in a room deep beneath the palace. The walls were covered with screens showing star maps and fleet positions. Red dots marked the locations of Keth warships. There were so many red dots that parts of the map looked like they were bleeding. Kira sat at the head of the long table. Around her sat the greatest military minds of the Valorian Empire. General Theron was the oldest, with scars on his face from 100 battles. Admiral Vex commanded the largest fleet in Valorian history. Commander Rhea was young but brilliant, the hero of the border wars. And in the corner, sitting quietly with his hands folded, was Daniel Park. No one had wanted him here. Empress Nira, Kira's mother, had argued against it for an hour. She said humans had no place in Valorian military matters. She said Daniel was a diplomat, not a soldier. She said his presence was an insult, but Kira had insisted. Daniel was her husband now. He had a right to know what was happening. General Theron stood and pointed at the map. "The Keth have already taken 12 of our outer colonies," he said. His voice was heavy with anger. "They came fast and without warning. Our garrisons were destroyed before they could send a single message." "How many ships do they have?" Kira asked. "At least 8,000 warships," Admiral Vex answered. "Possibly more. They are moving toward the inner systems. At their current speed, they will reach the capital in 3 weeks." The room fell silent. 3 weeks. That was not enough time to build new ships or train new soldiers. It was barely enough time to evacuate civilians. Commander Reyes spoke next. We should gather our fleets and meet them at the narrow pass. It is the only route to the capital. If we hold them there, we can slow them down. That is exactly what they expect, General Theron said. The Keth know our strategies. They know our fleet positions. Every move we make, they seem to predict. Then someone is giving them information. Kira said coldly. No one responded, but the tension in the room grew thick. A traitor in the Empire. It was unthinkable, but it explained everything. Does anyone else have suggestions? Kira asked. The generals looked at each other. They had no answers. They were proud warriors, but they were facing an enemy that was always one step ahead. Then a voice came from the corner. May I speak? Everyone turned to look at Daniel. Some of the generals looked annoyed. Others looked amused. Admiral Vex actually laughed. The human wants to give military advice, he said. This should be entertaining. Daniel stood slowly. He walked to the map and studied it for a moment. His face was calm and thoughtful. You are trying to defend a fixed position, he said. That is your first mistake. General Theron's eyes narrowed. Explain. The Keth have more ships than you. They also have better information. If you defend the narrow pass, they will simply overwhelm you with numbers. Or they will find another route that you do not know about, because their spy will tell them where your ships are not. Then what do you suggest? Commander Rhea asked. Her voice was curious, not mocking. Daniel pointed at a cluster of small stars on the map. Here, the Ember Nebula. The radiation inside it disrupts sensors and communications. If you move a portion of your fleet inside the nebula, the Keth will not be able to track them. When the Keth attack the narrow pass, your hidden fleet can strike them from behind. The room was silent. That is foolish, Admiral Vex said finally. The nebula is dangerous. We could lose ships to the radiation. You will definitely lose ships at the narrow pass, Daniel said. At least with the nebula, you have a chance. General Theron stared at Daniel for a long moment. Then he shook his head. We do not take advice from humans, he said. Return to your seat. Daniel nodded politely and went back to his corner. He did not argue. He did not seem offended. He simply sat down and continued watching. But Kira had seen something in his suggestion. It was not foolish at all. It was actually clever. Why had she not thought of it? 3 days later, the Valorian fleet met the Keth at the narrow pass. It was a disaster. The Keth knew exactly where the Valorian ships would be. They had twice as many vessels as expected. The battle lasted only 4 hours. By the end, half the Valorian fleet was destroyed. Admiral Vex died with his ship. Thousands of soldiers were lost. The news reached the capital like a cold wind. People wept in the streets. Nobles whispered about surrender. The empire was dying, and everyone knew it. Empress Nera blamed the alliance with Earth. We should never have trusted humans, she said in a council meeting. They have brought bad luck to our empire. They are weak, and their weakness has infected us. Daniel was in the room when she said it. He did not respond. He simply looked at her with those calm, patient eyes. That night, Kira found Daniel in the palace library. He was sitting alone, reading a book about Valorian history. When she entered, he looked up and smiled. I am sorry about Admiral Vex, he said. He was a brave man. He was a fool, Kira said bitterly. He ignored your advice, and now he is dead. Daniel closed his book. I am not a general, Kira. I am just a diplomat who reads too much. No. Kira walked closer to him. You are something else. I saw your suggestion at the War Council. It was not the idea of a diplomat. It was the idea of someone who understands war. Daniel was quiet for a moment. His smile faded slightly. I have read many books about military history, he said carefully. Human wars are very different from Valorian wars. We fight differently. We think differently. How so? Your people fight with honor. You announce your attacks. You follow rules. Humans do not do this. We lie. We cheat. We hide. We do whatever it takes to survive. Kira sat down across from him. That sounds dishonorable. Perhaps. But we are still alive. Daniel looked at her with something new in his eyes. It was not sadness exactly. It was more like the memory of sadness. Humans have been fighting each other for 100,000 years. We have tried every strategy, made every mistake. We have learned lessons in blood that your people have never needed to learn. Before Kira could respond, the library door opened. A young woman walked in. She had short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her name was Sora Kim, and she was officially Daniel's assistant from Earth. We need to talk, Sora said. Her voice was urgent. Both of you. She sat down and pulled out a small device. A hologram appeared showing lines of alien text. I intercepted Kef communications, she said. They knew exactly where our fleet would be at the narrow pass. They knew our numbers, our formations. Everything. The traitor. Kira said double quotes yes, but there is more. Sora pointed at part of the message. This signal came from inside the palace. Someone here is sending information to the Keth. Kira felt her blood turn cold. The enemy was not just outside the walls. The enemy was inside her home. Can you find them? She asked. Sora nodded. I am working on it. But I need time. We do not have time, Kira said. The next morning, another message arrived from the Keth. General Vorn, the leader of their forces, appeared on every screen in the capital. He was a massive creature with red skin and black eyes. His voice was like stones grinding together. People of the Valorian Empire, he said, your fleet is destroyed. Your leaders have failed you. I give you 3 days to surrender. If you do not, I will burn your capital to ash and make slaves of everyone who survives. The transmission ended. Across the city, people screamed in fear. In the library, Kira looked at Daniel. He was staring at the screen where Vorn's face had been. His expression had changed. The gentle, patient man was gone. In his place was someone harder, someone dangerous. 3 days, Daniel said quietly. That is enough. Enough for what? Kira asked. Daniel turned to look at her. For the first time, she saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before. It was fire. Enough to show them what humans can do. Kira found Daniel in the war room at midnight. He stood alone in front of the star map, moving ships and drawing lines with his fingers. The holographic display responded to his touch, and as she watched, she saw something remarkable, that he was not just moving ships randomly. He was building a strategy, and it was beautiful. The movements were precise and interconnected. Fleets moved like dancers in a ballet. Supply lines stretched and connected. Hidden positions appeared in places no one had ever thought to look. How long have you been doing this? Kira asked. Daniel did not turn around. A few hours. I have been watching you for 10 minutes. You have not made a single mistake. He was silent for a moment. Then he touched the display, and it froze. The ships stopped moving. The lines disappeared. He turned to face her. What do you want to know? He asked. Kira walked toward him slowly. Her heart was beating fast, but her voice was steady. I want to know who you really are. You are not a diplomat. Diplomats do not think like generals. Diplomats do not watch guard rotations and memorize escape routes. Diplomats do not create battle plans in the middle of the night. Daniel looked at her. The gentle mask he always wore began to crack. Behind it, she saw something else. Something old and tired and very, very dangerous. "I was a diplomat," he said. "For the last 5 years, that is all I have been. I went to parties. I signed treaties. I smiled at people I did not like. I tried to forget." "Forget what?" Daniel walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Earth has not always been united. For most of our history, we fought each other. Nation against nation. Brother against brother. 40 years ago, there was a war that almost destroyed us. They called it the Terran Unification Wars. Kira had heard of this. It was in the reports about Earth. A bloody civil war that lasted for 15 years. "I was a soldier in that war," Daniel continued. "I started as a lieutenant. By the end, I was a general. The youngest in Earth history." He paused. "They called me the Ghost of Mars." Kira felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard that name before. In the intelligence reports about Earth, there have been mentions of a military leader who had never lost a battle. A man who appeared out of nowhere, destroyed entire armies, and vanished before anyone could find him. "The reports said you were dead," she whispered. "The reports said a lot of things." Daniel turned back to face her. "After the war ended, I disappeared. I could not look at myself anymore. I had won, but the cost was too high. I had killed too many people. I had made too many widows and orphans. So you became a diplomat? I became a ghost. I traveled from planet to planet, trying to find peace. When Earth asked me to come here, I almost said no. I did not want to be near a military again. I did not want to remember who I used to be." Kira stepped closer to him. "Why did you say yes?" Daniel looked at her, and for the first time, his eyes were completely honest. "Because I saw your picture. I saw your eyes. You looked like someone carrying the weight of 1,000 worlds. I thought maybe I could help." They stood in silence for a long moment. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. "Can you save us?" Kira asked. "Can you defeat the Keth?" "I do not know," Daniel admitted. "But I can try. If you let me." The next morning, Kira called an emergency war council. When the generals arrived, they found Daniel standing at the head of the table. The star map was active, showing a completely new strategy. "What is this?" General Theron demanded. "Why is the human here?" "Because he's going to win this war," Kira said. Her voice was cold and absolute. "You will listen to him. You will follow his orders. Anyone who refuses will be removed from command." The general stared at her in shock. Empress Nira stepped forward, her face twisted with anger. "You cannot do this," she said. "He is a human. He knows nothing of our ways." "He knows more than all of us combined," Kira replied. "Daniel Park is not a diplomat. He is the Ghost of Mars, the greatest military mind Earth has ever produced. And he is my husband." The room exploded with noise. Some generals shouted in disbelief. Others demanded proof. Commander Rhea simply smiled. "I knew it," she said quietly. "I knew there was something different about him." Daniel raised his hand, and slowly, the room fell silent. When he spoke, his voice had changed. It was no longer soft and gentle. It was the voice of a man who had commanded armies. "I will not lie to you," he said. "The situation is desperate. The Keth have more ships, more soldiers, and better information. If we fight them directly, we will lose." "Then what do you suggest?" General Theron asked. His voice was still hostile, but there was a hint of curiosity. "We stop fighting their war. We start fighting ours." Daniel touched the display, and the map changed. "The Keth expect us to defend. They expect us to be predictable. We will not give them what they expect." He began explaining the plan. It was unlike anything the Valorians had ever seen. It used tricks and traps and false information. It put ships in dangerous places and asked soldiers to take impossible risks. It was bold and terrifying and completely insane, and it might actually work. When Daniel finished, the room was silent. General Theron stared at the display for a long moment. Then he looked at Daniel with new eyes. "This is how humans fight?" He asked. "This is how humans survive," Daniel replied. That afternoon, Sora came to Kira with news. She had found the traitor. It was Lord Marcus, a high noble who had served Empress Nera for decades. He had been sending messages to the Keth for months, believing that surrender was the only way to save the Empire. The arrest happened quietly. Lord Marcus did not resist. He simply looked at Kira with sad eyes and said, "I was trying to save our people." "You were trying to save yourself," Kira replied. "Take him away." With the traitor caught, Daniel's plan could finally begin. But there was one more secret that he had not shared with the War Council. That night, Daniel met Kira in their private chambers. He held a small communication device in his hand. "There is something I need to tell you," he said. "Before I retired, I made arrangements. Just in case." "What kind of arrangements?" Daniel activated the device. A hologram appeared showing a man in a military uniform. He had gray hair and a friendly face, but his eyes were sharp like a hawk. "This is Captain Luke Mason," Daniel said. "He was my second in command during the war. He is currently hiding in deep space with a fleet of human warships." Kira felt her heart stop. "What?" "When I agreed to this marriage, I contacted Luke. I asked him to bring a fleet to this region, just in case something went wrong. They have been hiding in the outer darkness for 3 weeks, waiting for my signal." "How many ships?" 200. "Small but fast. They are the best crews in the human navy." Kira stared at him. This man, this quiet, gentle man, had been preparing for war since the moment he arrived. He had been protecting her empire before the first Keth ship ever crossed the border. "Why did you not tell me?" she asked. Daniel smiled. It was the first real smile she had ever seen from him. "You never asked." Kira did something she had never done before. She laughed. It was a real laugh, full of surprise and relief, and something else she could not name. Daniel picked up the communication device and spoke 2 words into it. "It is time. Across the galaxy." Captain Luke Mason received the message. He smiled and turned to his crew. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "the ghost is calling. Let us go show these aliens what humanity is made of." 200 human warships powered up their engines and jumped into hyperspace. They were coming, and the Keth had no idea what was about to hit them. The Keth fleet arrived at the Valorian capital like a storm made of metal and fire. Thousands of warships filled the sky, blocking out the light from the stars. Their weapons glowed red with energy, ready to destroy everything below. General Vorn stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the planet below with hungry eyes. This would be easy. The Valorians were broken. Their fleet was destroyed. Their people were afraid. All that remained was the killing. "Send the message," he ordered. "Tell them to surrender now or watch their cities burn." The message was sent. The capital waited in silence. Mothers held their children. Soldiers gripped their weapons. Everyone looked up at the sky and wondered if this was the end. Then the response came. But it was not from the Valorians. A single human voice spoke across every Keth communication channel. It was calm and clear and completely unafraid. "This is General Daniel Park of Earth. You have 3 minutes to leave Valorian space. After that, I will destroy you." Vorn laughed. His officers laughed with him. A human? Threatening the greatest fleet in the galaxy? This was a joke. "Find me this human," Vorn said. "I want to crush him personally." But before his sensors could locate the source of the message, space itself began to tear open. Behind the Keth fleet, 200 points of light appeared. They grew larger and brighter until they exploded into reality. Human warships poured out of hyperspace like wolves emerging from the forest. They were smaller than the Keth vessels, sleek and fast and bristling with weapons. Vorn spun around in shock. Where did they come from? How did they get behind us? No one had an answer. The humans had appeared from nowhere. Like ghosts from the darkness. Captain Luke Mason sat in the command chair of the ESS Vengeance. He smiled as he watched the Keth fleet scramble to respond. "All ships," he said. "Attack pattern Ghost. Make them bleed." The human fleet did not fight like the Valorians. They did not form neat lines or follow predictable patterns. They scattered like sparks from a fire, each ship moving independently, each captain making their own decisions. The Keth tried to track them, but the humans were too fast. They dove between the massive Keth warships, firing missiles at weak points and then disappearing before anyone could return fire. They used the Keth ships themselves as shields, hiding behind them, forcing the enemy to fire on their own vessels. In the capital below, Kira watched the battle on a giant screen. She had never seen anything like it. The human ships moved like water, flowing around obstacles, finding gaps, exploiting every weakness. Beside her, Daniel stood at a command console, speaking calmly into a microphone. His eyes never left the screen as he gave orders. "Vengeance, target the flagship's engines. Hammer Squadron, provide cover. Atlas, I need you to draw fire from the Eastern Group." The ships responded instantly. They trusted him completely. And slowly and possibly, the battle began to turn. The Keth were bigger and stronger, but the humans were smarter and faster. Every time the Keth formed a defensive position, the humans broke it apart. Every time the Keth tried to pursue, the humans led them into traps. General Vorn screamed at his officers. "Kill them. They are just humans. Kill them all." But his officers were dying. His ships were burning. And the humans kept coming. The Valorian fleet had been hiding in the Ember Nebula, just as Daniel had suggested weeks ago. When the battle began, Commander Rael led them out. Fresh ships with fresh crews, attacking the Keth from a completely unexpected direction. Now the Keth were trapped between two forces. Human ships behind them, Valorian ships in front of them. For the first time, Vorn felt something he had never felt before. Fear. On the ground, Kira watched a human ship take heavy damage. Its engines were on fire. Its weapons were destroyed. It should have retreated. Any Valorian ship would have retreated. Instead, the human pilot aimed his crippled vessel at a Keth cruiser and accelerated to full speed. The ship hit the cruiser like a hammer hitting glass. Both vessels exploded in a ball of light that burned brighter than the sun. "Why?" Kira whispered. "Why would they do that?" Daniel heard her. He paused his commands for a moment and looked at her. "Because that is what humans do," he said. "When our homes are threatened, when our families are in danger, we do not surrender. We do not run. We fight until there is nothing left. And then we fight some more." Kira looked at the screen. More human ships were taking damage. More human pilots were making the same impossible choice. They crashed into enemy vessels, sacrificed themselves to save their allies, and died with curses on their lips and fire in their hearts. The Keth had never seen anything like it. They were warriors, yes, but they fought to win. They fought to survive. These humans fought like they did not care about survival at all. They fought like something much more dangerous. They fought like people who had nothing left to lose. General Vorn watched his fleet crumble. Half his ships were destroyed or disabled. His formations were in chaos. His officers were panicking. How? He growled. "They are primitive. They are weak. How are they doing this? A young officer looked at him with terrified eyes. "Sir, they are not weak. They are insane." Vorn looked at the battle map. The human ships were everywhere now, mixed in with the Keth fleet, making it impossible to fire without hitting friendly vessels. It was chaos. Beautiful, terrible chaos. Daniel's voice came through the communication channel again. "General Vorn, you have lost. Retreat now, and I will let you live. Continue fighting, and I will destroy every ship you have." Vorn's hand shook with rage. He wanted to refuse. He wanted to fight to the last ship. But he was a general, not a fool. The battle was lost. If he stayed, his entire fleet would be destroyed. "All ships," he said through clenched teeth. "Retreat. Fall back to the border." The Keth fleet began to withdraw. Slowly at first, then faster and faster. Ships jumped into hyperspace, fleeing the battlefield, running from the humans they had thought were so weak. On the surface of the Valorian capital, people poured into the streets. They cheered and cried and hugged each other. They had been saved. Against all odds, they had been saved. In the command center, Kira turned to Daniel. He looked tired. His face was pale and his hands were shaking slightly. The mask of calm he always wore had cracked, and she could see the exhaustion beneath it. "You did it," she said. "We did it," Daniel corrected. "Your people and mine. Together." Kira reached out and took his hand. It was the first time she had ever touched him willingly. His hand was warm and human and very, very real. "Thank you," she said. Daniel looked at her. For a moment, the general disappeared, and she saw the man beneath. The man who had tried so hard to find peace. The man who had hoped he would never have to fight again. "It is not over," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" Vorn escaped. He will not accept this defeat. He will come back, and when he does, he will come for me personally. Daniel squeezed her hand. This was just the beginning. A message appeared on the screen. It was from General Vorn. "Human," the message said. "You have humiliated me. You have destroyed my fleet. But this is not finished. I am coming for you. I will find you, and I will kill you with my own hands. Enjoy your victory while you can. It will be your last." Daniel read the message and smiled. It was not a gentle smile. "Let him come," he said. "I will be waiting." General Vorn returned 2 weeks later. He did not bring thousands of ships this time. He brought only his elite guard, the deadliest warriors in the Keth Dominion. 100 soldiers bred for war. And he brought himself. His message was simple. "I am coming to kill the human. Anyone who stands in my way will die with him." He landed his assault craft directly in the heart of the capital. No one tried to stop him. By the time the defense forces could respond, Vorn and his warriors were already marching through the streets toward the palace. Daniel watched them coming from a window in the throne room. He counted the soldiers, studied their weapons, and memorized their formation. "You should run," Kira said. She stood beside him, wearing armor for the first time in years. A sword hung at her hip. "There is still time. We can get you off the planet." "No." Daniel turned away from the window. "If I run, he will burn this city looking for me. Thousands will die. This ends here, today. Then I will fight with you." Daniel looked at her. She was beautiful and fierce and completely serious. This woman who had married him out of duty, who had thought he was weak, was now willing to die by his side. "Kira," he said softly, "this is not your fight." "You are my husband," she replied. "Your fight is my fight." Daniel smiled. It was the warmest smile she had ever seen from him. "Then let us go greet our guests." The Valorian soldiers formed a defensive line at the palace gates. There were only 50 of them, facing 100 Keth warriors. The odds were terrible. But when Daniel walked out to join them, something changed. He was not wearing fancy armor or carrying exotic weapons. He wore simple combat gear, the same kind he had worn during the Terran Wars. In his hands, he carried 2 human pistols and a knife at his belt. The soldiers looked at him. A month ago, they would have laughed. Now, they stood straighter. They checked their weapons. They remembered the battle in space, when human ships had fought like demons. "Today we fight together," Daniel said. His voice was calm but strong. "Human and Valorian, side by side. Some of us will die. But I promise you this. We will make them pay for every step." The soldiers roared in approval. Kira stood beside Daniel and drew her sword. The blade shone like captured starlight. The Keth warriors reached the palace gates. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons raised, their eyes cold with murder. General Vorn walked at their center, towering over his soldiers. He was enormous, nearly 3 meters tall, with muscles like twisted metal cables. He saw Daniel and smiled with teeth like broken glass. "So this is the famous ghost of Mars," he said. "You are smaller than I expected." "Size is not everything," Daniel replied. Vorn laughed. "No, but it helps." He raised his massive hand and pointed at Daniel. "Kill them all. Bring me the human alive. I want to break him slowly." The Keth charged. The Valorian line braced for impact. And Daniel raised his pistols and started shooting. The battle was chaos. Keth warriors crashed into Valorian soldiers. Weapons fired and blades clashed. Bodies fell on both sides. Daniel moved through the fighting like water through rocks. He never stayed in one place. He shot a Keth warrior in the head, ducked under a swinging blade, and shot another in the chest. When his pistols ran empty, he drew his knife and kept fighting. Kira fought beside him. Her sword was a blur of silver light. She was not as fast as Daniel, but she was graceful and precise. Every cut found its target. Every movement was perfect. They fought back to back, protecting each other, moving as one. It was like they had trained together for years. Like they had always been partners, but the Keth kept coming. For every warrior that fell, 2 more took their place. The Valorian soldiers were being pushed back. The line was breaking. Then Vorn entered the fight. He smashed through the Valorian soldiers like a boulder rolling through wheat. His massive fists crushed armor and broke bones. His roar shook the walls of the palace. He was heading straight for Daniel. "Human!" he screamed. "Face me." Daniel turned to see the mountain of red flesh charging toward him. He had no time to run, no time to reload. He raised his knife and prepared to die. But Kira stepped in front of him. Her sword slashed across Vorn's arm, drawing a line of black blood. The general howled and swung at her. She dodged, barely, and slashed again. She was fast, but Vorn was stronger. His fist caught her shoulder and sent her flying. "Kira!" Daniel shouted. She hit the ground hard and did not move. Daniel felt something inside him snap. A cold rage filled his chest like ice water. He looked at Vorn. The general was grinning. "Was that your mate?" Vorn asked. "Good. Now you know pain." Daniel did not respond. He walked toward Vorn slowly, his knife in his hand. "You think you can hurt me with that tiny blade?" Vorn laughed. "You are a fool." Daniel attacked. He was fast. Faster than any human Vorn had ever seen. The knife flashed and opened a wound on Vorn's leg. Another flash, and there was a cut on his arm. Another, and Vorn's cheek was bleeding. The general swung wildly, but Daniel was never there. He ducked and dodged and slipped around every attack. He was not fighting with strength. He was fighting with precision. "Stand still!" Vorn roared. "Make me," Daniel replied. The fight continued. Vorn was getting slower. The wounds were small, but there were many of them. He was bleeding from a dozen places. His movements were becoming clumsy. Daniel saw his chance. He dove between Vorn's legs, slashing both ankles as he passed. The general screamed and dropped to his knees. Daniel spun around and climbed onto Vorn's back. Before the general could react, Daniel pressed his knife against Vorn's throat. "Yield," Daniel said. Vorn struggled, but the blade cut deeper. Black blood ran down his neck. "Yield!" Daniel shouted. "Your warriors are dead. Your fleet is gone. You have nothing left. Yield, and I will let you live." The remaining Keth warriors had stopped fighting. They watched their general on his knees, a human's blade at his throat. Vorn was silent for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a broken, bitter sound. "You are not weak," he said. "I was wrong about your species. You are monsters. Beautiful, terrible monsters. Do you yield?" Vorn closed his eyes. "I yield." Daniel removed the knife from his throat and stepped back. Vorn collapsed forward, barely conscious. The battle was over. Daniel ran to Kira. She was lying on the ground, her face pale but her eyes open. She looked up at him and managed a weak smile. "Did you win?" she asked. "We won," he said. Together. The next day, the Keth Dominion formally surrendered. The war was over. The Valorian Empire was saved. Empress Nera stood before the entire court and made an announcement that no one expected. She praised Daniel Park, the human, as the hero of the Empire. She apologized for doubting him. She welcomed humanity as true allies of the Valorian people. The court applauded. The nobles who had once called Daniel the pet now bowed to him with respect. The galaxy had changed, and everyone knew it. That evening, Kira and Daniel stood together on the palace balcony. The stars were bright, and the capital city glowed with celebration below. "So," Kira said, "what happens now?" "Now we rebuild," Daniel replied. "Your empire, our alliance, everything. There is much work to do. And us?" Daniel turned to look at her. His eyes were soft and warm. "What do you want us to be?" Kira thought about the man she had married. The quiet diplomat who was secretly a general. The gentle soul who was secretly a warrior. He had saved her people. He had nearly died for her. She reached out and took his hand. "I want us to be partners," she said. "Real partners. Not just in politics. In everything." Daniel smiled. "I would like that." "There is one thing I have to ask," Kira said. "Why did you never tell me the truth about yourself? From the beginning?" Daniel looked out at the stars. "Because I was tired of being a general. I wanted to be something else. I wanted to be just a man." He squeezed her hand. "I wanted you to see me, not my reputation." "I see you now," Kira said. "I see all of you." She leaned in and kissed him. It was soft and warm and full of promise. When she pulled back, she was smiling. "You know," she said, "my mother still does not like you." Daniel laughed. "I can live with that." They stood together on the balcony, watching the stars. The war was over. The future was uncertain. But for the first time, they faced it together. And somewhere in the galaxy, humanity's reputation had changed forever. They were no longer the young species, the primitive newcomers. They were the people who had defeated an empire. The people who fought like demons and never surrendered. The galaxy had learned a simple truth. Do not underestimate humans. They will surprise you every time.